Hannah.
And I'm Anissa. Welcome to episode 43 of Ethnically Speaking, the show where we discuss everything affecting the UK's highly melanated communities, from pop culture to current affairs and everything in between. We are very excited today as we are joined by two lovely ladies who are hoping to join us here on the show on a more permanent basis. So first we have Nushy Rose. Welcome to the show, Nushy.
Thank you. Hi.
And for our audience who may not be as familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
So I'm from Northwest London, and I have worked in media creating content for the best part of a decade, covering everything from identity politics to the dismal state of my love life. So this show in particular is very close to home, and I'm very excited to be here.
Well, we're really glad to have you here too. That's a very interesting intro, but we're very glad to have you here too. And we are also joined by Tariyé Peterside. Welcome to the show, Tariyé.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And could you also fill in our audience a little bit about who you are, what you've been doing?
Well, yeah, I'm an actress. I'm a voiceover artist. I also write a little bit. I cover a lot of stuff about like the nature of pop culture and, you know, what that means for society at large and just watching films.
Well, we're very excited as Nushy and Tariyé will be joining us for the next few episodes. And as usual, we're going to still keep it 100, as today we're talking all about the rise of self-partnership. So recently, singer Maya revealed that she has been married and committed to herself for the last 7 years during an episode of Fox Soul's Out Loud with Claudia Jordan. However, she's not the only celebrity singing the praises of self-partnership, with everyone from Emma Watson to Lizzo arguing that the practice of sologamy affirms one owns value to yourself and also leads to a more fulfilling life. So my question for you ladies is self-partnership unhealthy or narcissistic? Or is it the recipe to happiness?
Well, I think it's kind of great. Simply because it's like, as a society, it's like, I mean, I'm just going to preface this with like my own personal experience. I'm Nigerian and I love my country. I love my people. But right now they're about to get put on blast. And we don't really value women unless they are married. We keep shoving women like towards marriage. Like it's so insane. Like to the point where literally like a friend of mine who recently got married, like she noticed like right away, as soon as like her engagement finger like became like visible and she put it on and was going to work with it, just how differently people would treat her, you know? And it just like people had a lot more like respect for her and things like that. And it's like literally it's like in Nigeria, like some restaurants and places won't let you in if you're a single unaccompanied woman. And they're like, we can't let you in. And you're like, why? And it's like, well, because you could be a prostitute. And you're like, all because I'm not married? All because I'm not accompanied? Like, so that's the thing. Like, I really love the idea of self-partnership. I was also reading about like this woman, like who did it like as a means of like reaffirming like her commitment to like herself and like self-love and like, especially because she'd been struggling with her weight. And like, she was doing it because she was like, I accept myself for fatter, for thinner, you know, because it's like, you can do everything right. You can like exercise, do the correct diet and everything. And your body still might not look like the ideal version you have in your head. So she sort of married herself as a means of like committing to like love of her body, no matter what, you know, and I think it's actually really good.
So I'm conflicted because in theory, I feel like I should be, like, according to the way people describe it, I am polygamous in the sense that I'm very happy by myself. I mean, often not by choice, but I'm perfectly content in my own company. I don't feel the need and never have done to be in a relationship. In fact, often I'm aware that I'm much happier outside of one than in one. And I've always done the things that polygamous people do anyway. So gone to the theatre by myself, gone to the cinema by myself, love going to restaurants by myself and not having to make small talk. But I kind of think there's something fundamentally wrong with this idea of self-partnering, because while the actual things you do in order to self-partner are enjoyable and fun, it kind of suggests that the only legitimate way to be fulfilled is having a partnership. And so it means even if you're single, truly being fulfilled as a single person, you have to make that commitment to yourself. So you're still partnering in some way. And I feel the terminology is kind of loaded in that sense and kind of based on something I personally don't agree with.
You guys are making some very interesting observations there. Gosh, I got to really work through those. But I really wanted to talk about just what self-partnering meant in general, because whereas we talk about self-partnering is finding fulfillment in yourself, like not in a relationship, I'm just like, I don't think it's narcissistic and I don't think it's unhealthy, because we should be looking to find fulfillment by ourselves anyway. And I think we should be thinking that I'm enough already. I cannot find fulfillment in another person. So I also agree that it is very problematic in terms of relationships and thinking that relationships are the end goal. But I really wonder, is this something that we're only leveling at women? Because I don't see men talking about being self-partnered. I think a lot of the people that we talk to, like Lizzo, Emma Watson, Maya, we're talking about women who are trying to realize that actually I don't find my worth in a man or in a partner. And I think it's mainly because that's what we're told. Like the fulfillment is to fall in love, to find our Prince Charming. Whereas men, on the flip side, they genuinely believe they can find different ways to be fulfilled, like in their jobs, in their home lives, in their careers, all of these different things. But I really see it's women having to self-partner to realize that actually I don't need a partner to fulfill me. So I wonder about that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, touching on what you're saying, Sophie, I feel like the this whole self-partnership and maybe it being more like women are more attracted to this kind of idea is probably a part of their kind of unlearning journey of like them being valued by men and things like that. But Nushy brought up such a good point that had me going, when I was just thinking about like, yeah, actually, like, why is it the idea of we even have to partner with ourselves to be happy? Like, what's this whole idea of partnership? And it struck her like a nerve in me in that I was reading an article and it was saying how basically everyone acts like being single is a choice when single is not a choice, because we're all born single and the partnership is the choice. And I thought to myself, yeah, I guess that's very interesting. So I guess even though people act like, oh yeah, I'm reclaiming myself and I'm single and this is whatever, when actually maybe that is the way that we've always been. So why would you like reaffirm that? But then obviously I'm of the double-edged side where, you know, I'm not a single born. I was born into partnership. So therefore partnership for me has a completely different meaning. You know, I'm a multiple, I'm a twin. So my whole life has been partnership. And so this whole idea of being polygamous has its own different nuance to me, because for me, like I could prescribe to the idea of that because it means to me, in my mind, the nuance is it feels more like being an individual. And so, as I said, I've been born into partnership. So all I've kind of strived for my whole life is to be individual and just to know what I want, what I like, what just Anissa thinks. What doesn't Anissa and twin think? Because sometimes it's so hard if you're so alike to figure out, is this what we both really like? Or is this just what I like? Like it's really difficult to figure that out. So because I was born into partnership, striving to be an individual and having this singleness has been like my big thing. So I could definitely subscribe to it. Do I think it's unhealthy? I think it's unhealthy if you use it as a way to kind of shut yourself off from the world. I was watching like a YouTube clip of a woman who married herself, and she was basically saying that even though she's polygamous, she still goes out and dates and things like that. So she still has like an active romantic life. And I think that's the way to play it, is to be a bit balanced. Not to say that if you didn't want to date, you're not balanced, but I think you need to have a bit of a balance. That's what I'll stop.
Do you know what? I actually disagree with the fact that people are born single. Like, I read that same article and I'm like,
really?
I don't know.
I really felt it, Sophie.
Do you know what, Anissa? I just don't feel, I know ladies, please disagree with me if you don't agree, but I just don't believe it, because it makes it sound like even saying that we're born single and the only way that we kind of partner with someone in marriage, again, we're talking about like the government term for single, which is basically you're not married. And even when you're born, they're already trying to think about the relationship aspect. No, we're not born single. We're born into communities, like we're born into families. And those families might be jacked up, but we're not born alone. Like came from someone's body into the world. You weren't even born alone. You never lived alone. So I think that's really problematic to say that people are born single. And because I'm like, what we don't seem to see with the sologamy idea, and what I saw from the people who were doing it, it's not that they're not having relationships, they're just not romantic ones. And I think when we take away the community aspect of someone being single by choice, by saying, actually, I don't want to date anyone, but no one is saying I'm going to stop having friends or families or this. I'm going to be in relationships. The difference is I'm just not focusing on romantic ones.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a mix of the two, because I mean, that's because humans, we're just such creatures of like contradiction, aren't we? Because it's like, yeah, we're born into communities. Like no one is technically born alone, because you're coming out of someone, you're being born into a family unit. And then like, but similarly too, you're the only person that's going to follow you from literally cradle to grave, because people will come in and out of your life. You're the only one that's going to be there constantly for all of the days of your life. Because even though we're in communities, it's like, well, you're the only one that's going to follow you here, there, everywhere until your dying day. And like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes people will sometimes lean on well, human beings are a social animal. Like, but sometimes they'll do that like as a means of like encouraging people to like stay in relationship dynamics that are not necessarily the healthiest. And so I'm completely with you on the idea of like, yeah, like they're still having relationships, they still have friendships, you know, they still have their families, people that they care for and love very greatly. But I think it's also because historically we have kind of played down the importance of other kinds of relationship in people's lives, you know, because it's like, we all know that cliche of like, you know, the girl who like gets in a relationship and then falls off the face of the earth, and like her friends, and like, her friends never hear from her again until the relationship's over. Like, but the thing is, it's like, it's kind of like, it's not really one or the other. It's like, in a way, we're born like into a community, into a family, but we are also kind of alone. So it's about kind of like figuring out like that balance, you know?
Like, what is the value of saying like, I'm married to myself? You know what I mean? Like so when people say this is what confuses me, because whether I'm born alone or into a community or like into the most amazing family on earth or the most destructive, like irrespective of all that stuff, what is the difference between me saying I love spending time by myself, and maybe I go on dates, but I'm not married to myself, I'm just obviously always with myself, compared to somebody who's married to themselves but is also dating? Because a lot of these people still go on dates. Like Emma Watson was saying, you know, she doesn't use Tinder, but she is actively looking for a partner, yet is still married to herself. Like, what is the difference between those two things apart from the term? And like, what is the value of the term? You know, is it just another way to say I'm happy and content in myself? In which case, why do you need to say you're married to yourself? Why not just exist as you do?
Do you know what? I think that's a really, I think that's a really interesting point. Oh, sorry, I don't know who was speaking. I don't know if they want to go first.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, I suppose, like, to Nushy's point, it's that, like, because society has spent so long, like, clubbing women over the head with the, you must be partnered, you're nobody unless you're Mrs. something, you know, it's because society's been, like, whacking us over the head with that for, like, literally centuries, that they're using that language of, like, self-partnership or marrying themselves to sort of reinforce wholeness of, like, I don't need a husband to be whole, I am whole on my own, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think that's what it is. And again, I would probably say that I just feel we should be advocating for this anyway. Like, not so much saying that, you know, if people want to say that they're polygamous, I don't have an issue with it, but we should be raising people to be like, you are fulfilled in and of yourself and by yourself, because it seems like these women are going on a relearning journey, and I can definitely understand it, because I would probably say after everything I've read this week that I was probably polygamous for a few years before I got married, because in my late 20s, I was really, really worrying that I wouldn't find a partner and I wouldn't find a husband. And that was due to society, culture, and religion. So all three together, I was really feeling the pressure. I'm like, I'm getting older and, my baby making years and, 30 is the cutoff point, because we seem to feel like 30 is the cutoff point for some reason to find somebody. I don't know. So that's how Eddie was shocked to me. I don't know about anybody else. But I worried about it for like 2 years straight. And people saying, don't worry about it, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I had to get to a point where I was like, actually, if it doesn't happen, so what? Like, it doesn't matter. And what about all the things that I want to do that I could be doing instead of worrying about this? And I'm like, I might not have children. I'm like, do you know what? I have wonderful nieces who I adore to literally the pit of my stomach. And I'm like, that will have to be enough. And so I decided to do acting classes, do presenting, going out, and just think like, actually, I have disposable income. All I have to worry about is my rent. Let me just go out and do all of that. Now, I don't want to say the flip side of that is that's when my husband came along, because that is the truth, but that's not the point of the story. The point is, I understand that having to relearn things that you've grown up with and understanding that you are enough by yourself. And I think the biggest issue is that we don't make women feel like that. Because like I said, I have never seen a guy talking about, I just need to really understand that I'm enough by myself. Men think that. They think it already. They think they're the prize.
Mm-hmm. They think they're more than enough even.
But that brings me back to Nushy's point. Like, I feel like we could do all of that, but we wouldn't have to say that we need to get married to ourselves. Like, I think I understand the idea of self-partnership. And as I said, I can see why it's so attractive. I don't think I'd ever go to the extent of like physically marrying myself, because I feel like that's just a little too much for me personally. It's just a little too much, because I can do all these things without I could do all these things without marrying myself. And I feel like with anyone, or maybe just let's say specific to women, because we've been talking about women, I think naturally it just becomes a part of your journey where you unlearn everything and then you relearn all the good things. But I don't know if we need to make it such a thing where it's self-partnership and marrying, because like you've said, Sophie, like you don't see men talking about it. Not that they have to unlearn and relearn the same things we do, but I think like whenever anything happens with women's lives, we just put like a fancy term on it and it becomes like clickbait, and we talk about it and it's articles and la 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 la. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like it's not that much. It is a big deal, but it's not that much of a big deal. We don't have to turn this into trend and timeline fodder. So that's why I feel like the marriage thing is just a little too much. But I do really understand the idea of self-partnership.
I guess, but it's like, I don't think they're specifically advocating for like every single woman to have a ceremony and the cake and the reception and everything else to denote like that feeling of wholeness. There's just that's just what some people have chosen to do to like mark their commitment to themselves. But like I say, I was watching a couple of the YouTube clips and she was just like, yeah, this isn't a prescriptive thing. I don't think this isn't for everybody to run out and have a ceremony and everything. This is just what I felt like doing, and but yeah, I totally get your point about like how, anytime something happens in women's lives that's potentially like earth shaking or like something that is out of the norm, we suddenly have to, throw the clickbait at it and all of like the articles and everything else. But I think that's just a function of history, because for literally so many centuries, it was, well, okay, but that's all you can do. The focus is to get married and have children. What other career? What income? That was just how it was for like so many centuries. So like now we're still kind of like living in the shadow of that, because that's how it's been for so many centuries,
So then I guess bringing it on to the second part of my question, then we've all spoken about like for single born, self-partnership. Do you actually think it's a recipe for happiness? Like, would you tell someone like, if you want to get happy, this is what you should do?
I'm pretty much doing it now.
I think definitely it's about being, understanding yourself and knowing yourself and finding fulfillment in the things that you like. Because I think something that you said, Anissa, which I think is really interesting because you're a multiple, that sometimes it might be difficult for you to understand actually what do I like versus like my sister, my twin. But I think I've had to learn that too growing up. Not even with my sister, but just what do I like versus what I'm being told that I should like, or how do I want to dress versus how I'm being told that I have to dress. And I think this idea of trying to work out who you are is a very important thing in life in general, and especially as some of these women are talking about who want to go into relationships, like the Emma Watsons and like the Lizzos, the people who are still open to dating. It is so important to kind of know these things before you have to kind of get in a situation where you might need to not compromise your likes, but you might not have the same amount of independence or amount of time to explore everything you would have done by yourself. So I think it's definitely very important to kind of work on yourself and work out what you like, because sometimes the world is really loud, and I think it can be difficult to understand where you fit in all of that.
Like, I can't imagine saying to somebody, I totally agree with you, but I just think the actual term itself, but I keep coming back to this, which is, I can't imagine ever recommending to anyone, my advice for you is you should go and get married to yourself and have a few years. If you feel free to date, no issues, you won't ever need to divorce. Like, what happens with infidelity? Like, if you have a relationship outside of yourself, are you therefore cheating on yourself? There's many issues here that this question doesn't address. And I feel like, first of all, there's that. Then there's self-partnership as well, as we're saying. Like, it's such a sexist, gendered term. No man, as we're saying, would ever be like, I'm off to get married to myself. It just wouldn't happen. And I think partially this is because women are more generous than men. I don't think a man would ever throw like a wedding party just for himself, like spend all that money, buy himself a new suit, like go through the ordeal. They would never get around to organizing it. There's many issues here which make this a gendered thing outside of the obvious. And the lessons, like it's saying, which obviously, invest in yourself, look after yourself, like look after your psychology or your whatever it might be to expand your mind. Like, we know those things anyway. You know what I mean? Like that is advice without even knowing about self-partnership. Any good friend, I mean, obviously, if you have dastardly plans against someone, you won't give us advice. But if you are looking out for the best in someone, you would, of course, tell them to do all those things. You would not. I just don't understand why we need this term. And I think it does come back to sexism. It does come back to women, seeing women in this old-fashioned way where they need to be partnered with something. So we have to control the way they see themselves even when they're choosing to actually enjoy their own single lives.
Nushy, I think you need to let the term go. I think I feel like you're
Nushy, I love infidelity.
I think you're holding on to the term a bit tight, like, because I think realistically, of course, like, marriage is between two people. Like, you cannot marry yourself. It's just I saw a video and the woman was just like, well, you can't really marry yourself, so I just was able to do whatever I wanted and say whatever I wanted to say. Like, technically, you cannot marry yourself, but I understand that there are a lot of questions there that you have about it.
The infidelity is what floored me, Nushy.
That made me laugh too much.
I'm actually riding with Nushy. I actually agree completely with what Nushy says. But the infidelity made me laugh. And I thought to myself, would I be a cheater? And I thought, honey, I'd be a cheater, pumpkin eater.
Guys, that's the thing. Like, I feel like you guys are getting a bit too like hung up on the term of like self-marriage, because it's like you're not cheating on yourself if like you want to be with somebody else, or you could just say that you're in an open marriage with yourself. If it's really
could.
If it's really like, if we're going really down to the nitty gritty of like terminology, you could just say that like, you're just like, something, I'm in an open marriage, so I'm married to myself, but I can go and date and marry other people.
So I was thinking, do you guys think that this idea of sologamy is anti-relationship? Because some of the things that I was reading on it, it was just like, one of the things actually blew my mind, and I was just like, okay, I just don't agree with this whatsoever. So it was saying that you need to find fulfillment and independence yourself because you cannot find fulfillment and independence in a marriage. Now, let's widen marriage to relationship. And I really struggled with that because I was just like, I don't agree with that. As someone, I guess, who is married, I'm like, I don't think that if you're self-partnered, then you get to have all the independence in the world and be fulfilled. And it was saying you don't need anyone else to push you towards your goals. It should only be you. But on the other hand, I'm just like, I don't know if saying you cannot also get that support from a relationship. So like, are they warring against each other, or can like they coexist?
Depends if it's an open relationship or not, the partnership with yourself.
I think think they can coexist. I don't think it's one or the other, because it's like, I don't know. I don't think it's like anti-relationship or like anti-marriage or anything. It's just, I think when they say that, I think it's them trying to combat against, like, because for so long, people, particularly women, have been encouraged to seek fulfillment through marriage. And it's a case of like, okay, but it's entirely likely that you can get married and that fulfillment still will not come. And it's about, I guess, kind of recognizing in yourself and like knowing in yourself what it's going to take to make you whole. So it's not necessarily like a anti-relationship thing necessarily. I think it's more like okay, like marriage is great, but that's not the totality of who you are. You are like a whole person entering into the marriage, and you're still a whole person within the marriage.
I think it's all circumstantial, to be honest. I think it depends on the person who's self-partnered, and it also depends on the kind of relationships they've had or what because I feel sometimes like maybe this is just my personal feeling. Sometimes when people are like, oh, I'm self-partnered, blah, 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 it's usually in the response to a bad relationship that they've had or bad experiences they've had. So it's like, okay, well, it's been so bad, I'm going to the other side where it's just me. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I usually think it's in response to that. So in their mind, the way relationship is done is not in a one that they can be fulfilled in or be independent in or be happy in. And then that's why I say it's circumstantial, because that's not all relationships. I think it just depends on the construct of your relationship. So there's some people who in their marriages are as independent as they want to be, and there's some people in their marriages who are like as Velcro as they want to be. It's all circumstantial. So that's why I was like, I don't necessarily think self-partnership and marriage and like being married to yourself is anti-marriage and relationship. I don't necessarily think it is. I think there are a lot of cases where it probably is connected.
So I'm thinking maybe it's the opposite. So rather than it being like a reaction to having a bad relationship, like taking myself an example, I'm on Tinder, I'm on Bumble, I'm on Hinge, I'm frequently pacing the streets behind my mask, looking, trying to give people eye contact. I do everything I can to try and hunt myself a partner. And I will tell you, it doesn't work. So what I'm thinking, apart from obviously I need to change my methods, is actually maybe I should go into a self-partnership, do this also because actually it's their only option. If you want to be in a partnership and nothing's working for you, it could also be the flip side, which is, until somebody swipes right, I just do this.
That's completely right, Nushy. That is circumstantial. So in your circumstance, it's not in the response to a bad relationship, so therefore it's not anti-relationship. I think it just depends on the person.
I think that's one of the things I struggled with in looking at this topic, is that a lot of people seem to be going into it because of toxic breakups. And I think what it seems that sologamy is about is redefining relationships and re-understanding the relationship with ourselves, the relationships, romantic relationships. And I think there's always space to do that. Because if you want to be by yourself, be by yourself. Like, I think that should be celebrated more. People who actively choose never to find a partner. But also if someone's saying, actually, I want to get myself right before I find someone, then we need to give people the space to do that as well. So sologamy, if you're down for it, be down for it.
Yeah. And also, I think like the term of people getting married to themselves, I think that's really just more to combat like, all of like the extended family and aunties and everyone saying like, so when are you gonna get married? It's like, I'm already married to myself. Like, it's just a way of combating those little things from like relatives. Because it happens, you get to a certain age, it's like, so is there anyone?
But how do you think they'd respond though if you told them that?
My dad would think I was crazy if I said that, honestly. He would think I was insane. He'd be like, it's not possible. It's not possible for you to be married to yourself. And I think it's very confusing messages that we get from family, because my dad was like, don't find no one, my dad didn't mean none of my boyfriends, because he was just not there. Focus on your studies. Then when I got to about 27, 20, he was like, when's this going to happen? And it broke my heart, because I was just like, oh my gosh, this man has been telling me to stay single for years. And then now he's starting to worry, which upped my worry. So I think there needs to be a way for older generations to understand, like, actually, I can wait. I'm okay. Maybe I want kids. Maybe I don't. But yeah, I don't know how well my family would have reacted to the self-marriage stuff.
I mean, my family would probably be like, you know, something sounds about right, because they've given up asking me about relationships. Now they're like, so when are you going to do that PhD? When? Like, that's what my family ask me now. They're like, so when are you going to do this PhD? Oxford, Cambridge, Durham, where you going? Chop, chop. Like,
I mean, I think my family, they wouldn't be surprised if I said something like this. At least they'd have an excuse. But their Christmas present to me this year, it was wrapped in this beautiful, exquisite box. And so I was thinking, you know, this is going to be an amazing gift. Anyway, it was obviously a troll from them. And I opened it up, and it's just a book called How to Find Love. And then inside it said, best wishes and good luck. Mum, love you too.
no.
So,
No. On that note, whether your parents are pushing you into a PhD or giving you a book called How to Find Love, I guess if you want to self-partner with yourself or get into a partnership with anybody else, it's really your choice, I guess, on whatever makes you happy. So thank you so much for watching another episode of Ethnically Speaking. Let's keep the conversation going. Is self-partnership the recipe for happiness? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want even more from us, be sure to click the link in the description below to our email list, Extra Ethnic, a special segment emailed directly to your inbox every single week. I want to take this moment to thank our very lovely guests who have joined us today. So I want to thank Nushy Rose and Tariyé Peterside. You can connect with them on Instagram at Nushy Rose and at Tariyé Peterside to see everything that they are getting up to. For a summary of everything we discussed today, head over to unitedmelaningroup.com/ES043. There's a link in the description for that as well below. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss a thing. We will see you on Monday, where we'll be discussing the controversial Cambridge University debate on racial consequences of Winston Churchill. Until then, make sure you wash your hands, wear your mask, stay safe, and stay alert.